And for today, we will be using the Q&A function today. So I want to thank you all for coming. Today's February 23rd, 2023. And we are talking about chapter 12 today of our foster care and student success guide. So we want to thank you all for coming today. Welcome. And we will get started very shortly. There is no sign-in sheet. We don't have sign-in sheets for these webinars. So just wondering where that was coming from. So just want to make sure we welcome you all today. And thank you for joining our webinar for chapter 12. So let's get started. So just wanted to inform you all of our actual foster care and student success guide. This is what we will be talking about today. All the information that is in chapter 12, we will be covering that. But before we do, I wanted to make sure that you are following along with me. Please go to this website if you don't already have it on your desktop. So please go ahead and go to this site. We will be covering chapter 12 today, only chapter 12, and we will go through all the things that you need to know, and there's very good information for you to share about chapter 12 today. So go ahead and click on, well, not click, but go ahead and make sure you follow along with us as we go through our foster care and student success guide today. So now just wanted to give you information about myself. My name is Dr. LaTrenda Watson. I am the Highly Mobile and At-Risk State Coordinator here in the Highly Mobile and At-Risk Student Programs Division here at TEA, the Texas Education Agency. I am the foster care point of contact for the state, and I also assist with pregnancy-related services and any at-risk services. So this is my introduction to you all. Just want to let you know, if you have any questions about any of the information we're going to go over today, please feel free to reach out to me. At the end, I will show you our foster care liaison inbox, where you can always send questions and in any scenarios that you may need assistance with to that inbox. So we welcome any questions or comments that you have today. So next, our foster care and student success guide collaboration. So we could not put this great book of knowledge together without our collaborators. So Texas Education Agency, the Texas Department of Family and Protective Services, and also the Children's Commission. So we all work together to build this great foster care and student success guide, so you will be able to have information readily at hand anytime you are working with our students in foster care. So please make sure you're following along with me in our presentation. I always have the page number of where I'm speaking at the bottom right of the screen. You see the page number of where I'm talking from. So I just want to make sure you're following along as we go through our foster care and student success guide. So next, our objectives for today. I want to make sure we provide educators and all those working with students in foster care a brief overview of foster care and student success guide. I want to make sure we will familiarize educators with the foster care guide and relevant laws and policies that affect the educational experience of students in foster care. And I also want to provide access to the foster care guide for purposes of ensuring students in foster care are provided the proper assistance. Everything in this foster care and student success guide is valid and readily available for you to use for our students in foster care. So please make sure, if you have questions or situations happen in your districts, make sure the first thing you do, you're pulling out this foster care and student success guide, because it has all the relevant information you need to help you with our students. Next, how is today going to go? So today we will be going through our foster care guide overview. So I'm going to give you a quick overview of our foster care guide. Then we'll delve into chapter 12. I'm going to pause for any questions. Then we'll continue with the chapter 12. And then at the end, we'll have another period for questions. And then I will talk about our foster care and training series, the last one, chapter 13, that will be coming up. So just want to make sure that you're following along with me as we go through the guide. So now in the Q&A, please indicate your job title. This helps me as I go through the presentation and I know who is here with me today. And also in the Q&A, you can put down, have you worked with students in foster care who are also served by special education? So that's what we are delving into today. We are looking at foster care and special education. That is the goal for today. And thank you all for putting your information in the Q&A. So we have counselors here today. We have a diagnostician, welcome. We also have a research analysis. It's great that you're researching on our programs in foster care. Thank you so much for being here today. Homeless and foster care liaisons, we welcome you. And the foster care liaison, and yes, you do work with students in special education, so it is very good that you understand what happens and what works within the special education umbrella. So we want to make sure that we are using our tools and our strategies that we have with special education for our students in foster care. So that is the whole purpose of this chapter 12 today. So I'm so grateful to see all the foster care liaisons. Welcome our foster care champion at our ESCs. We welcome you all today. Our federal programs, directors of federal programs, we welcome you. So the more you know about this information, because remember, foster care has a lot to do with Every Student Succeeds Act. So we'll be talking about that. So our counseling coordinators, our foster care liaison, our district foster care liaisons, our district point of contacts, we welcome you today. Also, we are happy to see all of our guests today, foster care liaisons. This is valid and great information. So thank you all for being here. So now let's talk about our foster care and student success guide. But before we do, I want to make sure you are having an update. So every local education agency, LEA, must confirm their foster care liaison is listed in our ACTED system. So the ACTED system is a system that TEA uses to house point of contacts for districts. So if you are the point of contact and you are not listed in our ACTED system, please contact your district's ACTED coordinator to request any changes or updates to the ACTED directory. So more information is available on our TEA Foster Care and Student Success webpage under the Foster Care Liaison tab. So we want to make sure that you have that information. So if anyone needs to get in contact with you about your student in foster care in your district, they will be able to search you in our ACTED system. Also, you are able to access our ESCs, Education Service Centers, foster care champions. They're listed in the ACTED system also. So if you're trying to reach your ESC foster care champion, you can also look them up in our ACTED system. So we just want to make sure that you are aware of that. Next, how do you sign up for updates? So in order to get any updates, if I send out any announcements or any our foster care newsletters that we do send out, you can get those automatically to your email, but you must sign up for the updates. So please, on the screen, we have a screenshot of the TEA homepage. Make sure you go sign up for updates and then click on all those in our special populations, because we are in our special student populations Programs Division. So please make sure you sign up for updates so you know when we are passing out any information that is very well needed for you all. Now, I want to talk about the foster care guide, the icons within the guide. So when the guide was restructured and listed in March of 2022, we came up with ways to be very useful for you all. And remember, at the bottom of the page, I'm on page 4 in the foster care and student success guide. So please follow along with me. So we have our colors, content breakout by chapters. So those color schemes by chapters. So if it's orange chapter, it's usually the preface, appendices, and the references. If it's a green chapter, it is an overview. If it is a purple chapter, it is cross systems and collaboration. And if it is blue chapter, it is district and LEA, local education agency responsibilities. So our chapters are color coded. Then we also added icons. So the use of these icons are very valuable. We have those tips, those reminders, ways that you can collaborate. We have notes. We want to focus on the law. So we do have that law icon, any resources, new items that was not in the previous foster care guide that is in this one. So we located that by new items, and then also best practices. We wanted to highlight those best practices that you have provided TEA and said that it works in your district. We want to make sure that we provide that information for everyone to use. So please make sure you understand our icons and our color codes, because we want to make sure that the foster care and student success guide is very useful for you. So now also our table of contents. So our table of contents, all of the areas are hyperlinked. So you can actually go directly to what you want to look at. So if you want to go to chapter 3 and look at those cross systems collaboration is necessary, you can click on that and go directly to page 30. So please make sure you follow along, you use this helpful table of contents, and when you go and to describe this information to your district, you are able to present this information also. So our table of contents are on pages 5 through 8. So where can you get more information about foster care at TEA? So we have great information for you that's readily available for you. Please visit our TEA Foster Care and Student Success webpage, where we have resources for you, more information about our ESC Foster Care Liaison and our DFPS Educational Specialist. We have that information for you. We have forms on the webpage that are readily available for you to use. Also, as I said before, please subscribe to our TEA Foster Care and Student Success newsletter, so where it will pass out valuable information and highlight very good information for you. And then lastly, our email. Please email us, fostercareliaison@tea.texas.gov. If you have questions or if you have scenarios that you want to get more information on, please email that foster care liaison inbox. So we do look at that inbox and we do answer your questions or concerns. So please feel free to reach out to us here at TEA. And all of this information is in your foster care and student success guide on page 10. So now we went through an overview of the foster care and student success guide. Guess what? Let's head into chapter 12. I want to make sure we utilize your time well today. So in chapter 12, what are we highlighting in chapter 12? Students' eligibility for or receiving special education services. So we want to talk about students in foster care receiving or if they're eligible for special education services. So some of the topics that we will hit today is special education eligibility, serving as a parent regarding special education decisions, the surrogate parents, the role of the caregivers for students in special education, requesting a psychological or educational evaluation of a student, and then considerations for highly mobile students. And then if a student's special education needs are not being met, we're going to talk about that too. And then the last one, we're going to talk about section 504. And all of this information is on page 130 in your foster care and student success guide. So please follow along with me, make notes, take notes. This will be very valuable information for you. So now let's delve into it. I'm on page 131 right now. Let's talk about special education eligibility. So if a student is evaluated and determined to have a disability, and because of that disability has an educational need for special education and related services, the local education agency, which we will call LEA, is required to provide that student a free appropriate public education, FAPE, in accordance with the federal Individuals with Disabilities Education Act. So I want you to see those letters because we're going to focus on those letters within this chapter. So our FAPE, which is free appropriate public education, and then also federal law is Individuals with Disabilities Education Act, which is IDEA. So this is the reason behind the special education eligibility. So what we wanted to highlight for you as a tip on this page is that if the LEA staff have a reason to suspect that a student in foster care has a disability under IDEA, the staff must refer the student for a full individual and initial evaluation. Additionally, the LEA staff should advise the caregiver to contact the LEA's Director of Special Education to learn more about having the student evaluated to determine eligibility for special education services. So we want to make sure that you stay in contact with your district, especially having that when you have that that enrollment conference. As soon as the student is enrolled, the special education director should be in that meeting also, because if a need occurs, we want to make sure that that person is there and able to answer any questions at that time. So this information is on page 131 in the guide. So now let's delve into free appropriate public education. So for those who made this information maybe new to you, and for those who know this information, we want to make sure that it is clear in the foster care and student success guide, so those working with students in foster care understand all the dynamics that play into part when considering special education. So I'm on page 131. Let's talk about free appropriate public education. So first, the federal law guarantees that all students with disabilities from the ages of 3 to 21 have the right to FAPE. Districts must ensure that FAPE is made available to children with visual impairments or who are deaf or hard of hearing. So all this information must be made available. As long as an individual student is 21 years of age on September 1st of a school year, the student is eligible to receive special education services. This is very important information. So going back to IDEA, remember that's that federal law, emphasizes that special education and related services must be designated to meet a student's unique needs and prepare the student for further education, employment, and independent living. So we want to ensure that all the aspects of those educational needs are being met for that student in the school. FAPE is available to any individual student with a disability who needs special education and related services. And then regardless of where a student moves or what type of facility they live in, a student who is eligible for special education services must be allowed to attend school and receive all those services specified in the student's IEP, Individualized Education program. So remember, so once those students are classified and have been classified as eligible for special education, remember each one of those students will receive an individualized education program, IEP. And all of this information is on page 131 and 132 in our foster care and student success guide. So hopefully you're following along and highlighting this very valuable information. So now let's talk about child find. Child find is very important. So all children with disabilities residing in this state who need special education and related services, including children with disabilities attending private schools, must be identified, located, and evaluated. So those are three things. They must be identified, they must be located, and they must be evaluated. That is child find. So IDEA specifically includes children with disabilities who are homeless, wards of the state, and highly mobile children, including migrant children, as groups of students for whom school districts have child find responsibilities. So districts, you have those child find responsibilities, and we want to make sure that you know that our students are included. So it says our homeless children, homeless wards of the state, which is conservatorship, and highly mobile children. So our tip that we put on this page is that district foster care liaisons should work with district special education directors to determine avenues for collaboration among child welfare providers and schools to better identify students in need of special education services. So there should be some sort of collaboration. Foster care liaisons and special education directors should be working together to make sure we properly identify these students. So all of this information is on page 131 of our foster care and student success guide. So now let's delve into serving as a parent regarding special education decisions. So a parent, for the purposes of IDEA, is defined. So remember, we are looking at the federal law now, and it's defining the word parent. So biological or adoptive parent, a foster parent unless prohibited by state law. This is allowed in Texas and is not prohibited. So we wanted to let you know that information. So foster parent is not prohibited. They can be allowed. They are allowed in Texas to serve as parent. Guardian generally authorized to act as the child's parent or to make educational decisions for the child. A person acting in place of a parent and with whom the child lives, including other relatives. Person legally responsible for the child, and then a surrogate parent. And we're going to talk more about a surrogate parent in this chapter also. So we just want to make sure the terms of parent according to IDEA. This information is on page 132 through 133 in our foster care and student success guide. So now talking more about the parent in regarding special education decisions. So now we talked about declaration of the word parent according to IDEA. Now we're talking about that parent making decisions. So what is needed in order for a foster parent to be eligible to serve as a parent under IDEA? So first, the Texas Department of Family and Protective Services, DFPS, must be appointed as the temporary or permanent managing conservator of the student. So first, the student has to be in conservatorship for DFPS. And then the rights and duties of DFPS to make the education related decisions for the student cannot have been limited by the court. So remember, we're going all the way back to chapter 1 now, explaining conservatorship and the court. So all of that information comes all the way here to chapter 12. So those must not, any education related decisions for the student cannot have been limited by the court. And then the foster parent agrees to participate in making special education decisions on the student's behalf and has or will complete a training program before the student's next scheduled ARD committee meeting, but not later than the 90th day after the beginning to act as the parent for making special education decisions. I know that was a lot of wording, but make sure you break this down so that foster parent, once that foster parent is classified by DFPS, they then agree to make those educational decisions on behalf of the student. And they must complete that training program before the student's next scheduled ARD so they can understand things that may happen in the ARD. And that has to happen no later than the 90th day after beginning to act as the parent. So hopefully I made that a little more clear for you. And all this information is on page 132 through 133. So now every student in foster care has an educational decision maker selected by DFPS to make day-to-day educational decisions on behalf of the student. So make sure you know that every student has an educational decision maker, and we classify that by the 2085E, which is the educational decision maker for that student. So when the students come to enroll, they have the 2085 and they have that 2085E to let you know who the educational decision maker is. So IDEA requires that the state and local education agencies involve parents in decisions about their students' needs for special education or related services. So they must be, they must know and involve, they must be involved in those decisions. The LEA must appoint an individual to serve as a surrogate parent for a student who receives special education services within 30 days of realizing there is a need. Remember, you do not appoint a surrogate parent if there is no need. If the foster care, if the foster parent is there and they're ready to assist, remember, you must be able to provide that information. And we want to make sure that you have that information. So I have in here, I'm sorry, and I didn't mean to not have that in there. For the ARD, I want to make sure everyone understands what ARD means. It admission, review, and dismissal process for special education. So it is the meeting to talk about special education eligibility and services. So for those who don't know what ARD is, it is admission, review, and dismissal. It is that formal meeting that they are having. So also the appointment of a surrogate parent must occur if the LEA is unable to identify or locate a parent for a student with a disability, or the foster parent of a student is unwilling or unable to serve as a parent for the purposes of decision-making related to the student's need for special education or related services. So remember, there is a special need for a surrogate parent. If the foster parent that was chosen by DFPS is not doing what they're supposed to do, then you see the need for a surrogate parent. All this information is on page 133. So did you know a surrogate parent may also be appointed by the judge presiding over the student's child welfare case? So if a student has a court-appointed surrogate parent, the LEA does not need to appoint a surrogate parent for the student. So there's a lot of checks and balances that need to be done before appointment of a surrogate parent. So now, not eligible to be a surrogate parent. So you just can't appoint anyone to be a surrogate parent. So they must be eligible. So all state employees are not eligible to be a surrogate parent. So for example, an employee of TEA, the district, anyone who's employed by the local education agency, which is your district, or any other agency involved in a care or education of the student, such as DFPS, the Texas Juvenile Justice Department, or a residential treatment center. They are not eligible to be a surrogate parent. So any person with personal or professional interest that conflicts with the interests of the student, they are not eligible also. So we want to make sure you know the law, the reason why behind this. The LEA should make reasonable efforts to ensure the assignment of a surrogate parent not more than 30 days after it is determined that the student needs a surrogate parent, unless alternatively, the judge overseeing the student's care appoints the surrogate. So this is very detailed information, and I hope you're highlighting this information for your district's understanding, or if you're working with students in foster care, this is very important information. So now the surrogate parent responsibility. So when a surrogate parent is appointed, we must know what the responsibilities are. So first, be willing to serve in that capacity. So the surrogate parent must be willing to serve. Then they must exercise independent judgment in pursuing the child's interests. So they're not looking at anything else but the best interest of the student. Next, we ensure that the child's due process rights under applicable state law and federal laws are not being violated. So we want to make sure that they know what those are, so they know that the students' federal and state laws are not being violated. Then complete a training program that complies with the minimum standards established by agency rule within the time specified. So the agency is TEA. So complete a training program that complies with the minimum standards and is in the Texas Education Code, section 29.015B, and it is in that information. Next, visit the child and the school where the child is enrolled. How can you make decisions if you're not visiting the actual school? So make sure you're visiting the child and the school. Review the child's educational records. If you are the educational decision maker for that student, you have access to those records. So please review those records if you're a surrogate parent. And then consult with any person involved in the child's education. So those who are involved with the child's education, it could be the child's teacher, the caseworker, the court-appointed volunteers or guardian ad litem, CASA volunteers, attorney ad litem, a foster parent, and caregiver. So consult with all of those if you're a surrogate parent. And then lastly, attend meetings of the child's ARD committee. So you must attend those meetings because that's where the decisions are being made. So make sure you are attending the child's ARD committee. All of this information is on page 133 to 134 in the Foster Care and Student Success Guide. So now surrogate parent and the foster parent. So remember, actions to take if a surrogate or foster parent are not fulfilling those duties. So as a LEA and you see the foster parent or the surrogate, they are not fulfilling their duties. If the LEA determines that a court-appointed surrogate parent is not properly performing their duties, the LEA must consult with DFPS about the issue. And DFPS will notify the court of any agreement to review the appointment of the surrogate parent. So first thing you must do, please consult with your DFPS caseworker or your DFPS educational specialist. They will be able to assist you. Upon that notification, the court must review the appointment and enter any orders necessary to ensure the student has a surrogate parent who performs their required duties. So we want to make sure, and the courts want to make sure, that there's a person in place who will make appropriate educational decisions for the student. And this information is on page 134. So now we wanted to provide you with resources for surrogate and foster parents. So These resources are in our foster care and student success guide. Remember, it is electronic, so all you have to do is click on the links. So our resources for surrogate parent, you have surrogate parent training and eligibility. So if you feel the need, or if you know someone who wants to be a surrogate parent, this is information that will help them go through the training and determine their eligibility. Also, surrogate parent training and what it means to be a surrogate parent. That's information in there. And then also we want to provide you with the Texas Education Admission Review and Dismissal Guidance. So if you need guidance on the ARD meeting, please visit our TEA webpage on ARD guidance. So this is very valuable information for you. And all of these are on page 134. Now, so I've been talking so much so far, so I want to pause and give you an opportunity to provide with a little information. So what information in chapter 12 has been new to you so far? So based upon you hearing all of this information so far, the first part about special education and students in foster care, what has been new information for you so far? And you can put it in the Q&A. So has anything been new to you so far? And I know the word ARD, it may be new to some people. So if you have a student in special education services, you must attend an ARD meeting. And if they are eligible, you do have that IEP, the individualized education program. So some people didn't know TEA surrogate information. Yes, TEA special education page, and I'm going to give you that information. They have great information about surrogate parent on the special education page for TEA. So we want to make sure you know the support. So I'm glad to see you said it's happy that you see there is so much support. And remember, who can be a surrogate parent? That is very valuable information. Like, you just can't pick anyone to be a surrogate parent. You must have that, and you must meet those qualifications. So thank you all for that. So I'm glad you are here today going over this very valuable information, because we want to ensure that our students who are in foster care and may need special education services are receiving the appropriate services. So thank you all for being here today and understanding what that surrogate parent role is. So that seems kind of popular there for what's been new so far. Thank you all for sharing that. So now let's keep going. Let's keep right going and finishing up chapter 12. So now I'm heading into another section, the role of the caregiver for students in special education. So we want to let you know what that role of that caregiver is if a student is in special education. So if viewed as the parent, because remember we talked about the parent's role based up on FAPE and also IDEA. We talked about that. So now we're going into more information about that. So if viewed as the parent for special education purposes, the caregiver has the authority to make all special education related decisions, including requesting an independent educational evaluation if they disagree with the findings of the evaluation conducted by the school. So the parent has the right to do that. Remember, you're making those you're making decisions based upon the child's need. Also, they also have authority to file a complaint and request due process over service or placement disagreements. So there is a due process available for special education. So they have the authority, the parent has the authority if they feel the need to. And they are required members of the ARD, the Admission Review and Dismissal Committee, and must be included in the development of the student's individualized education program, that IEP that I was talking about earlier. So they are part of the ARD committee and when developing IEPs for the student. And all of this information is on page 134 of our Foster Care and Student Success Guide. So now, students in foster care may have completed other related educational and psychological evaluations while in foster care. If the LEA recommends a student in foster care undergo psychological and or educational assessments, they must obtain consent from the student's caregiver, the caseworker, or the educational decision maker. So if the district recommends a student to be evaluated, they must obtain consent from the student's caregiver, caseworker, or educational decision maker. So we want to make sure we highlight that information. So schools should work with the student's caseworker to request a copy of the student's most recent psychological educational evaluations to assist in or alleviate the need for further testing. And then also to continue coordinating with other child welfare workers and stakeholders about recommendations that are identified through the evaluation. So there must be a lot of communication and collaboration taking place for this. The caseworker, how do you get that caseworker information? Remember, as soon as they are enrolled, they have the caseworker information on that 2085. Remember, when you are enrolling a student, they have the 2085 and the 2085E. That caseworker information is on those forms. So we want to make sure we clarify that. So please, and any information about requesting a psychological education evaluation on page 134 and 135 of our Foster Care and Student Success Guide. Now, considerations for highly mobile students. So our highly mobile students are students who move frequently around districts. So we want to make sure we have considerations for that. So what happens when a student moves in the middle of being initially evaluated for special education? So just watch the wording for that, initially evaluated for special education. So under most circumstances, if a student is being initially evaluated for special education eligibility, the evaluation must be completed no later than the 45th day of school following the day on which the district receives written consent for evaluation. This is very important. So remember, under most circumstances, if a student is being initially evaluated for special education eligibility, the evaluation must be completed no later than the 45th school day following the date on which the LEA received written consent for evaluation. And there are some exceptions to the 45th day timeline, which are found in our 19 Texas Administrative Code, section 89.011E. And some of the exceptions, I will talk about the exceptions. If a student has been absent from school during that period on 3 or more school days, the period must be extended by the number of school days equal to the number of school days during that period on which the student has been absent. So that is one of the exceptions. And then another exception is for the students under 5 years of age by September 1st of the school year and not enrolled in public school, and for students enrolled in a private or homeschool setting, not later than the 45th school day following the date on which the school district receives written consent from the evaluation form from the student's parents or decision maker. So we want to make sure that you know that there are some exceptions to that rule. Please view 19 Texas Administrative Code, section 89.011E. So now we are to the initial evaluation for student for special education and highly mobile students. So we want to make sure that you understand some ideas for those students also. So if a student was in the process of being evaluated for special education eligibility by an LEA and enrolls in another LEA before the previous LEA completed the full individual initial evaluation, the new LEA must coordinate with the previous LEA as necessary and as expeditiously as possible to ensure prompt completion of the evaluation. So there's a lot of communication that should be happening between the two LEAs. So if a student comes to your district and they have already completed the previous individual initial evaluation at the previous LEA, they must coordinate to make sure their prompt completion of the evaluation. So please look at that. And then next, the new LEA is not required to complete the full individual and initial evaluation in the 45 school day timeline. So as long as the new LEA is making sufficient progress to ensure a prompt completion of the evaluation, and the parent and the new LEA agree to a specific time when the evaluation will be completed. There's a lot within there. Remember, there must be communication. Please have communication with the district and the parent, the decision maker. So please make sure you are communicating. And all of this information is on page 135. So now, did you know, we want to make sure we have some little tidbits in the guide for you. Texas law requires that the receiving LEA to accept a special education referral made by the student's previous school if the student is homeless or in substitute care. The receiving LEA must provide comparable services to the student during the referral process or until the new school develops an individualized educational program, that IEP, for the student. So this is Texas law. So make sure you are understanding what the laws have pertaining students in foster care who are moving from school to school, especially dealing with students in special education. So we want to make sure you have that understanding. And this is on page 135. Now, let's talk about our highly mobile already receiving those special education services. So we have students who are highly mobile and they already receiving special education services. What should be happening? So if the student has already receiving special education services at the prior LEA in Texas and enrolls in a new Texas LEA within the same school year, the new LEA must provide services comparable to those described in the student's IEP from the previous LEA until the new LEA either adopts the student's IEP from the previous LEA or adopts, and implements a new IEP that meets the federal requirements. So those comparable services are very important. So we want to make sure that you understand if a student is already receiving those special education services from the previous district and enrolls in a new Texas school within the same year, the LEA must provide those comparable services until they have that ARD meeting and adopts, develops, and implements a new IEP that meets federal requirements. Next, if a student was already receiving special education services and moves into a new LEA during the summer, the new LEA must fully implement the IEP, Individualized Education Program, in effect for the student on the first day of school in the new school year. So if they move during the summertime and they come enroll in your school and they have an IEP, that first day of school, that IEP should be in effect. So we want to make sure that you understand that information also. And this is on page 135 of our foster care and student success guide. So please highlight this area. Next, special education service, special students in special education needs are not being met. So what do you do if you see a student in special education and their needs are not being met and they're in foster care? So those concerns related to a student special education program can be addressed either informally or by using the ARD committee process locally with the students. Either that, well, they must include their teachers, the campus principals, the special education director, the superintendent. So please make sure if you know their needs are not being met, you have the ARD committee process to use. So if the local resolution is not possible, so if you're going through their process, the district's process, so if local resolution is not possible, the law provides for state level dispute resolution functions through TEA. And there is a link for that. So we wanted to make sure we provide you with the link that you can click on that. The dispute resolution handbook, which provides detailed information related to special education mediation, complaints, and the due process hearings, can also be accessed through the link. So please view that link on page 135. So please make sure you do the local process first. And if there's still no resolution, then you move to the state dispute resolution function. Now we get to the point we're talking about Section 504. So Section 504 of the Federal Rehabilitation Act. This is federal. Section 504 is federal. So Section 504 is civil rights law that prohibits discrimination against individuals with disabilities. So you cannot discriminate against individuals with disabilities. The purpose is to ensure that a student with a disability has equal access to education. So that's what we have Section 504 in our schools for, to make sure we are providing every student with a disability they must have equal access to education. So the purpose of Section 504 is a plan. Section 504 is a plan that can be made within the school, is to create a blueprint that is unique to each student and provides the student access to an appropriate education. So an appropriate education is one that is designed to meet the individual needs of a student as adequately as that of their non-disabled peer. So we want to make sure that it is equal access. So Section 504 plans provide educational accommodations that level the playing field without changing what the student is expected to master. So we want to make sure that we want you to know what Section 504 is, and that it is to ensure that a student with a disability has those equal rights and access to education. And this is on page 136. So now for Section 504 and foster care. So how can Section 504 and foster care go hand in hand? So not all students who are eligible for protections under Section 504 will be eligible for special education and related services under IDEA. So not all students who are eligible for protections under Section 504 will be eligible for special education. Just want to make sure you understand that. To receive special education, a student must have a disability that falls within at least one of the 13 eligibility categories identified in IDEA. And because of that disability, it requires special education and related services. So remember, there must be some categories met before the student can be identified as special education. And then students with disabilities who do not meet one of the 13 eligibility categories under IDEA may still be entitled to protections under Section 504. So that's why we wanted to talk about Section 504 within the special education chapter, because if a student, if they may not be eligible for under IDEA for special education, they may, it does not guarantee, they may still be entitled to protections under Section 504. So in those cases, the students will be developed, the school will develop the student a 504 plan if they are deemed eligible for 504. This is on page 136 also. So we wanted to provide you with information for Section 504. So the U.S. Department of Education, they have disability discrimination and overview of Section 504 with helpful resources and links. So this is already linked in your foster care and student success guide. So please, if you want to find out more detailed information about it, please use the links. Also here at TEA, we have a technical assistance for Section 504. We have a website developed for that. So please visit that website if you need more technical assistance. And then finally, the U.S. Department of Education, they have a parent and educator resource guide to Section 504 in public elementary and secondary schools. So we want to make sure that you have those resources. If you have more questions regarding Section 504, please make sure you view these links, and all of these links are on page 136. And then lastly, we have a lot of resources. We didn't want to just provide you with all of this information in the special education chapter in chapter 12. We wanted also to provide you with actual links of the information that we provided for you. So for special education, the basics. So if you want to know more about accommodations, if you want to know about key terms to know in special education, if you want to know a glossary of those terms, especially when I started talking about ARD and IEP, all of this information is in the glossary of terms. ADHD and hyperactivity information, and also behavior in school. So we have links for all of those resources in the foster care and student success guide. Next, if we have our parent resources and advocacy groups. So if we have any of those, we have more information about that. So Disability Rights Texas, that has great information about that. Special education, SpedX Text, that is TEA's special education website. It has great information for parents, resources, and advocacy groups. Partners Resource Networks, empowering parents through education. We want to make sure parents know all the information they need to know. Texas Parent to Parent, and also Decoding Dyslexia Texas. Those are great information, great websites for that. And then finally, we want to tell you about the supports that we provide here at Texas Education Agency. Special Education Dispute Resolution Process, I mentioned that earlier. This is actual web page to it. The Special Education in Texas A to Z. We provide you all the information that you need to know about special education in Texas. And then the TEA accommodations resource. So for those who may need accommodations, TEA has provided actual information about those resources. And then the Parents Guide to the Admission, Review, and Dismissal Process, that ARD committee. So we have a website that for a Parents Guide to the Admission, Review, and Dismissal Process. And all of this information is on page 136, and the links to each one of those. So make sure you are looking at those. And if you do see some links that are not working, we will make sure that we update those. Since the guide is electronic, we do have the capabilities to go through and make sure we upload and make sure all those links are valid. So thank you for that. So now we have reached the end of chapter 12, and I want to make sure that I allow you time to look and think about all the information we went through. Hopefully you have been following along with us in the guide to ensure that everything that we've talked about, you understand. Remember, I provided you with the foster care liaison email address for that inbox. If you have any more questions after this, please make sure you are getting those to us. So in the Q&A, please tell us what information in today's presentation will you make sure that staff is trained on. I know you come here today. I want to make sure that you are leaving here today with information to take back to your districts in order to provide training to ensure that our students in foster care needs are met. So please make sure what information that you see today that you will take back to your districts. The forms that are needed in order to determine who is the educational decision maker. Yes, you do need those forms. You must know who is the education decision maker for all those students. The timelines, very important timelines. Special education and 504, those are very important matters for the students. So someone also said if a previous LEA has begun the process of identification, collaboration should happen. Yes, that is very important. And I think the information on the surrogate parent is very important also. Training for staff never ends. Thank you so much. Remember, you may do training at the beginning of the year. Do not wait until a whole nother year to have more training. Remember, provide trainings throughout the year because information is very key. Information is very key. So now I want to make sure that you are aware our chapter 13, which is the last chapter of the Foster Care and Student Success Guide. So that will be our last webinar on the Foster Care and Student Success Guide. March 30th, 2023. Please come back and join me for our Foster Care and Student Success Guide for chapter 13. We hope that you invite more people to understand. And in chapter 13, we are talking about transitioning from foster care and post-secondary education opportunities. So I will go through in detail, just like I did this chapter, about all the information we have in chapter 13. So please come back March 30th, 2023 from 10 to 11:30. And to register, you can go on TEA's Foster Care and Student Success website, our foster care website on TEA, and it has the registration link on the webpage. So please make sure you're doing that. Then if you have any further questions, I want to make sure I have the inbox for you. So foster care liaison at tea.texas.gov. Please email us. We want to ensure that everyone has the appropriate information. And if you have any questions or concerns, please email us. And then lastly, would you please make sure you fill out this survey? This survey is very helpful on how we are presenting this information to you. We want to ensure that you get the appropriate information in the manner that is helpful to you. So please make sure that you are providing us feedback. Please provide us with feedback on this. This is very valuable information. Oh, and a question that I see in the Q&A, will TEA be adding this guidebook training to their mandatory list? That would be very nice to consider. So I think we probably could talk about that being into consideration. So thank you for saying that. This book, this guide is a great wealth of knowledge, information for our students in foster care. And we want to ensure that all district staff understand the benefits that are for our students in foster care, the necessity and the needs and everything that goes along with having students in foster care in our districts in Texas. So we want to make sure that you have that information. So please make sure and remember all of the webinars from the overview to all the way till chapter 11 is currently on our TEA website. You can go back, you can view the presentation, and you can also view the recordings. All the recordings are there from overview. Chapters 1 through 11 are currently on our TEA website. Go back and watch those, and also give those links to personnel in your district to have them watch any particular chapter you want, or watch all of the series. We want to make sure that it is available for you. So thank you all for coming to join us today with our training. We want to make sure that you have the very up-to-date information. So hopefully I will see everyone and invite more people to our next training on March 30 or chapter 13. So thank you all for coming today. Please make sure you fill out our survey to assist us in helping you and meeting your needs. So thank you all for coming today, and have a great rest of the day.